This program is a paid commercial announcement from Jacob Media Partners and does not reflect the views of WPHT or its management. Today's program is pre-recorded.
Jacob Media Partners presents The Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. Presented by the law offices of Adam Malamut and Associates. Powered by InjuredWorkers.com and driven by Jaguar Land Rover Westchester. Now, live from the Malamut and Associate Law Studios, The Adam Malamut Show. Hosted by Adam Malamut.
And welcome in, everyone, to the Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion as we come to you on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Adam, I'm coming right to you. Great lineup today. Special guest in the house as we deliver this program to the listening audience. I'll let you take it over from there.
Thanks, Krause. Happy Saturday night. And, we're entering the fall with my Philadelphia Eagles down with no wins yet. I mean, this is crazy. Zero. Who would have thought the Eagles
would have get one tomorrow, sir?
That's what I'm counting on. But listen, we've got some folks who are banged up, and anything we can do to get some help, Krause, we may run you back out there.
That was a great center in my time. Nobody ever got to the quarterback.
Yeah, but back then, they had leather helmets, right?
Exactly right.
The equipment was a little
bit
different.
I'm in the position I'm in today.
There you go. There you go. Listen, I wanted to start off a little light because my heart is very heavy. 2020 has been a challenging year. As I welcome our listeners, and before I introduce our guest today, I want to take a minute to talk about something that is deeply personal and affects every one of us, every one of our listeners, male and female, conservative and liberal. It doesn't matter where you were born. If you were in listening range of the Adam Malamut Show tonight, you've been affected by the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away after a courageous battle with pancreatic cancer on September 18th, 2020. 2020 has been a year like no other of our generation. I usually throw some levity in and we'll poke some fun at Krause, but this isn't the time. The year that we've had, just when it seems that we've seen tragedy and a lot of lost hope. Many others have lost hope because of the amount of battle Ruth Bader Ginsburg has fought on behalf of all of us. More than just a Supreme Court justice, she was truly a superhero in every sense of the word. She fought for not just those who couldn't fight for themselves, but those who did fight for themselves, but their battle just wasn't enough. Every door that was put in front of her, she kicked down with her intellect, with her commitment, and with her failure, her willingness to not accept failure. So with that said, today's show is going to be dedicated to the memory of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and all that she has done, not just as a justice, but as a federal judge, as an attorney, as an advocate, as an activist, as a woman, and as an American. I am very pleased to introduce two special guests today, one of whom you've heard from in the past, and the other is the most special guest that we've had on the show. So without taking anything away from my first introduction, I want to welcome back Mark Natale.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. It feels good to be back and happy to talk about such an important topic.
And Mark and I always have these shows that we have a blast with, and at the end of the show, we sit there saying, God, we could have talked for another couple hours. We just have a great dialogue going.
Absolutely.
Our super special guest, and the first time appearing on the Adam Malamut Show, is my wife, Nicole Tavares Malamut. And Nicole, before I welcome her, so folks can understand her perspective, is a minority female who I met in law school. I'm sure she would tell you that I stalked her, but I think it was the other way around. She's well-educated, well-traveled. She's speaks 5 languages. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg is somebody who was very important in her development as a female, as somebody who had an acute eye for those who open doors for others. She identified Ruth as one of those people. When we have conversations about who you'd like at your dinner table, which we just happened to have this past week, if you can invite any 5 people to your dinner table, every time for the past, 23 years that we've had that conversation, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was always at the top of the list. That being said, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's jump in. Let's talk about who Ruth Bader Ginsburg is. I'm not willing to say was, because I believe that her legacy will continue to live on through all of the people that continue to fight for the rights of others. A few shows ago, we talked about the fact that there are no laws on the book that restrict a man from doing anything with his body, but there were for women. And Mark, let's go right to you. Let's talk about the importance of Ruth Bader Ginsburg as an advocate.
Absolutely. And this is something that I've spent a lot the last couple of days talking about, because I think in the layers of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy, because she meant so much in so many different ways, the one that I think gets overlooked or not talked about enough is her career as an advocate. I think a lot of times it's seen as a prelude, and it's seen to lead up to her judicial career. And I think that we need to focus a little bit more about just how much she accomplished as an attorney. I mean, here's someone who, she went to 2 different Ivy League law schools. She graduated at the top of her class while she was caring for her sick husband, who would also go on to be a very well-known lawyer, and raising a family. And then every single door that she could have after graduation was closed to her. So she went and she created her own path. And in doing so, not only did she become an academic right here in New Jersey, but she became one of the top litigators in the country. And she did that through the ACLU Women's Rights Project. And I read an interesting stat before the show. The ACLU Women's Rights Project was founded by her in 1972. They filed 300 gender discrimination cases in the first 2 years they were there. I mean, here was someone who saw an issue, who understood what the problem was, and went and used their law degree to get the courts to start moving the country in the right direction. And that is something that I have always been inspired by. I always say the Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Thurgood Marshalls, the great advocates of the 20th century, even before they ever put on a robe, that's something that I think all lawyers can really strive to try to be in some small way. And I think that we should always be thinking about how we can use our legal skills, our advocacy skills to try to move the needle in the right direction. And that's something that she did in a huge way.
Nicole, as a woman and as a minority woman, what do you think that Justice Ginsburg has meant to women, and especially young women?
Well, first of all, let me start with, it's challenging for me to speak on the subject, as I'm so emotionally moved by what has happened. As you stated earlier, she was absolutely an inspiration to me, has been throughout my professional career, but as a woman, her fierce support and unwavering attention to seeking out the right things, not just in the world of justice and advocacy, but as a human being, the right things for women, is unparalleled. She is the embodiment of equality, of justice, of everybody being the same, of humanity. And that is what I think she brought to the table again and again and again and again, from getting into law school, persevering through the challenges that she faced, right to the end. I think that she came forward and she stood for humanity. So not just for women and minorities, but for humanity, which is something that we need right now.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned that we need that right now, and we're going to talk more when we come back from the break. But the loss of somebody with such passion, with such energy to advocate, is something that we can't allow to be lost. We need to take what she has and take that and again, continue her legacy and continue to advocate and to continue to teach our young people. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper, but I do want to mention she is a human being. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a New York foodie. She was a fitness enthusiast. She did a lot of things that extend beyond just the law. We'll talk more about Ruth Bader Ginsburg when we come back.
She was highly respected because she bent over backwards to work with the other judges when she could, and she stood up and was counted when she couldn't. I mean, and of course along the way she became kind of a cultural icon, which surprised even me, I think.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Adam Malamut Show. Very, very special conversation going on here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. You can connect with Adam on social media. Hit him up on Twitter at Adam S. Malamut ESQ. Adam's also very active on Instagram at attorney_Adam_Malamut. This is the Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. Adam?
Thanks, Krause. I want to remind everybody that we are less than 40 days to November 3rd. If you do not vote, you get the government that you deserve. If you are not happy with how things are going, and this is not a plea for you to vote for one party or the other, but the point is, get out and vote. The lack of participation in our electoral process is absolutely stunning. There was over 100 million people who were registered but did not vote in the last federal presidential election. 100 million people didn't vote. Get out and vote. Be a part of the process. Tell the government what you want. Don't just sit here and talk, and I know that it's unpopular for me to say on this radio station, don't just sit here and talk about how great it would be to make America great again. Those are empty words. Make America great by being the voice, by being the activist. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, getting back to her, when asked how she'd like to be remembered, she said, "I would like to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability." And I really think that is a powerful statement beyond just the simple words and the simple quote. That's indicative of the determination that she used to shatter barriers, and the determination she used to make sure that as a female Supreme Court justice, she had recognition for her individuality, separate and aside from her accomplishments. Before we got on the radio today, Nicole, we were talking about a way that she would separate herself from the men on the bench, and her and Justice Sandra Day O'Connor came up with a way to do that. Tell the audience.
So, as everyone knows, justices wear the black robes, and they were originally designed specifically for men, so that your shirt and tie would show at the top. So one day, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said to Sandra Day O'Connor, well, we should do something that represents us, that is tailored towards women. And in her first picture that she ever did, she wore a French-style collar. It was a long, white, tie-looking collar. But as her style evolved, and we've all been privy to it. We've seen it evolve. She started wearing decorative collars, and those decorative collars were not only decoration, they actually started to stand for things for her. We all know that the white collar that she received from, it's called a jabot, by the way. The jabot that she received from Cape Town, South Africa, the white one that she favored, she wore often, and she wore it when she was feeling very positive about things. She had her descending collar. It had jewels in it, had a certain look to it. And whenever she wasn't happy about things, like the day after the last president was installed, she wore that collar.
And that collar was spikes, right?
Yep, it has the little spikes in it, and it's decorated in a kind of a strong statement way, let's just say. But she had many collars. She wore a bright yellow collar when she was happy. Right when President Obama became president, she wore the bright yellow collar. And she just had a way about her in which she would demonstrate with her behavior, her thoughts and her feelings, and society at large caught on.
You know, there's another quote that she's famous for. Her mother had told her to be a lady, and for her, that meant to be your own person, to be independent. And I think that she epitomized independence, right? She epitomized through her decisions. She epitomized individual rights. Let's talk about individual rights. And maybe one of the most famous individual rights issues that she dealt with is a woman's right to control what happens with her own body. And now, I'm hoping our listening audience stays with us on this, because this is going to be an educational piece. And historically, some of the listeners of this station may disagree. But for any women out there who have been sexually assaulted, have been violated, or have had other reasons that they wanted to take control of their body and make decisions, Justice Bader Ginsburg, she helped them to solidify their rights over their bodies. Is that right, Nicole?
She absolutely did. That was Stenberg versus Carhart.
So, and Stenberg versus Carhart essentially interpreted what we know as Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and also Roe v. Wade. So the litany of those three cases, those three cases were basically used to strike down a Nebraska law which made partial birth abortion illegal without regard for the health of the mother. So they prioritized the abortion law, or partial birth abortion law, over what could happen to the mother and her health. And so often we see decisions made, and physicians have to make calls. I'm a big believer that lawyers and politicians don't belong in medicine. Doctors have to make calls for what's in the best interest in the health and welfare of their patients. And these opinions went well beyond the politics. They went directly to allowing doctors to do what are necessary for their patients' health, and allowing women to do what they believe is necessary for them and their body's health. Mark, let's talk about some of the other opinions. Before we get into the employment opinions, Safford Unified School District versus Reading was a search and seizure opinion. 2009, it overturned a strip search of a 13-year-old middle school student because the search was unreasonable. School officials were entitled to qualified immunity because the law at that time wasn't sufficiently clear. Mark, there are a number of employment decisions and labor law decisions, and we'll get to them in the next segment. But, I mean, isn't it safe to say that the impact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had on the Supreme Court has really created the freedoms that we know today?
Absolutely. And the Safford opinion is a great example because the constitutional rights of students is something that pops up in the Supreme Court once in a while, but over the last decade, it's really exploded in courts around the country, including in New Jersey, which is where the basis of the New Jersey versus TLO case is where Safford turned on. And this is, so if you take a 500-foot view of this is another example of an area of rights, of an area of individual rights, like you said, where Ruth Bader Ginsburg is on the forefront. And none of the conversations about her, no one's going to talk about the rights of students in school. But here you have another groundbreaking issue that she's leading the charge on.
This is the Adam Malamut Show on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT.
I do have a dissent collar. Years ago, Glamour magazine gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it was a bag filled with goodies, and one of them was that dissent collar. And I thought it looked just right for a dissent.
From the Malamut and Associates Law Studios, this is the Adam Malamut Show.
And as we come back to you on a Saturday night here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, this is the Adam Malamut Show. Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. And today, Adam, real good conversation, sir.
It is an absolute pleasure to have our special guests, Mark Natale from Malamut and Associates, and my wife, Nicole Malamut, who, ironically, I met in law school. And with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it just added one more great conversation that we're able to have about the importance of the people that we look up to and continue to look up to, even posthumously, that made an impact on us. And this was a hot topic conversation at our dinner table, unfortunately, at the time that she passed. And it was a teaching moment for us to be able to express to our children and our children's friends who happened to be with us at the time the significance of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And again, we need to keep her legacy alive. We need to keep the work that she's done alive. I can tell you that our listening audience has benefited from the work that she has done. I've always been a big believer in, support the people who are good for the country, not necessarily the people who fall right down the column that you may vote in. And she's somebody who is good for everybody in this country. Everybody in this country has benefited from the work that she has done as an attorney, in academia, as a federal judge, and ultimately as the Supreme Court Justice appointed by President Clinton and commissioned in 1993. Mark, let's talk about the employment law impact of Justice Ginsburg.
Absolutely. I think there are two cases in particular that I really want to discuss in terms of employment law impact. The first is one that's getting a lot of press right now, and rightfully so, because it's Ledbetter versus Goodyear. And this was also getting a lot of press because it ties into everything Nicole was bringing up about the dissents and the dissent collars and everything that she became known for as a Supreme Court justice. In Ledbetter versus Goodyear, a plaintiff's case who was alleging gender discrimination got thrown out because they claimed that she did not timely file her claim with the EEOC. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote a dissent. And a lot of people would think, oh, what's the big deal about a dissent? She puts on a collar, she says she disagrees, and it doesn't become law. Well, dissents can move the conversation. They can start moving the law in the right direction. There are countless examples of dissents from Supreme Court opinions later becoming majority opinions and prevailing law in the future once those ideas are more accepted. And this is an even more extreme example than that because her dissent ended up becoming the very first law that President Barack Obama signed.
And Mark, if I can just stop you for a second, for the benefit of our listening audience, explain what a dissent is and explain what kind of behind-the-scenes wrangling goes on at a place like the Supreme Court in terms of who's going to get to write the opinions, whether it's the majority or the dissent.
Absolutely. So after a case is briefed before the court, supporting groups file what's called friend of the court briefs, and then there's oral arguments. The judges conference the case, and they sit around a conference room table, and there's no fancy process. They bring up a case and they all cast their votes. It's not a secret ballot. Everyone knows who's voting, and that's considered, they'll take a look at that, and that's where the case stands then. A lot of times there is the wrangling that Adam mentioned, where justices try to convince other justices to get on their side. Well, what if we change this about the opinions? Sometimes you have a case that's going to be closely held, and someone might say, well, wait, can we make some changes to make it a unanimous opinion? What can we do to find common ground? And sometimes that common ground is impossible. So the Chief Justice decides who's going to write the majority opinion. But then if you are not going to join the majority opinion, if you're going to vote against the court's decision, then you have the option of writing what's known as a dissenting opinion, which is it is not the law, it is not the holding of the court, but you get to put your views and explain why you disagreed with the case. So we talk about this in our employment law radio shows a bit. When you have an employment law violation, your first step, if you live in a jurisdiction that requires it, is you file a claim with the EEOC or with a state agency that's similar to that, where you need to preserve your rights. And you have very strict timeline to do that, 180 days. Well, in Ledbetter, they said that they were outside of that window because it had been longer than 180 days from when the unfair payment started. What Ruth Bader Ginsburg tried to do was adapt what's called the continuing violation theory, which is that every separate violation constituted a new starting of the clock. That wasn't how the court held, but that's how the Lilly-Ledbetter Act changed the law and adopted Ruth Bader Ginsburg's opinion, and was actually the first bill that Barack Obama signed. And that's been something that both has been in the press a lot. A lot of people are remembering this as an example of the power of her dissents, but is also something that ties into our employment practice significantly.
So, and the tie into our employment practice is the Equal Pay Act in many ways. Which in New Jersey arose out of Burlington County. Diane Allen sponsored it. It's known as the Diane Allen Equal Pay Act. Nicole and I have talked about this before, and this essentially proposes to support the fact that if a female and a male are in equal positions, they should get equal pay. It sounds simple, right? We talk about this with sports. It doesn't work. And we talk about this in everyday life. It's amazing how many violations there are. So let's say you're a listener and you or a friend is a female and works at a department store. And there's a non-commissioned position, just an hourly position, and there's a male counterpart at that same department store who's making $1 an hour more. That's a violation. If you're a manager and you have a male counterpart who's making more than you as a manager in the same title, same experience, and oftentimes less experience, that's a violation. You're entitled to compensation. And not only are you entitled to compensation, there are anti-retaliation laws that protect you for coming forward with this. These are things that we talk about routinely. These are things that we offer free consultations on. I would encourage you, if you or someone you know has been affected by equal pay, or in this case, unequal pay, reach out to us, 877-567-5293, 877-567-5293. You can also visit us at www.malamutlaw.com. Nicole, we talk about this all the time, and a conversation that we've had dealt with sports and dealt with the female, the women's national soccer team and the compensation that they received, and this is something that's still being battled, versus the men's. It's hard for people to kind of rationalize why that happens, but it's somebody like Justice Ginsburg that lays out the inequities of that. So when you have a conversation with our daughter or her friends, Justice Ginsburg's a great person to bring up, and the Ledbetter case is a great way to bring it up. What kind of dialogues have you had with your friends about that issue?
We have talked, extensively regarding the impact of Justice Ginsburg, her views, the way she addressed things. Going back to Mark's statement earlier and her dissent in the Ledbetter case, something that she was a quote of hers: real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. And I think that quote serves as an inspiration as well as marching orders to all of us who feel at a disadvantage, who are in a lesser position, who are disenfranchised. That is, you have to get up. You have to speak. The Megan Rapinos, the National Women's Soccer Team is a perfect example of women getting up and speaking. They deserve, by their sheer force of what they're doing, they're showing you that they are capable, more than capable. They had a ridiculous season. They're showing you that they're doing the work, the same work that their male counterparts are doing, and they're doing it better.
They're winning.
They're winning.
That's right.
And
they're getting TV reviews?
They're getting all sorts of accolades, but the most important thing is being treated equally and fairly. They're not asking for more, they're asking for the same.
That's right. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit deeper into the labor and employment issues, the discrimination. We're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm here with my guests, Mark Natale, Nicole Malamut. I'm Adam Malamut. We'll be back in a minute.
Real people, real perspectives, real opinion. Now back to Adam Malamut.
One segment to go on the Adam Malamut Show as we come to you on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. On behalf of Adam, on behalf of Nicole, and on behalf of Mark, who have delivered a great show for you today, we thank the listening audience, Adam, for tuning in.
Thanks, Krause. These shows always go by so fast, and there's so much to be said. I want to remind people that the labor and employment issues that we're about to talk about are things that we can help you with. Labor and employment law, depending on what jurisdiction, is very specific to your jurisdiction. Although there are federal statutes, there are also state-specific statutes and hoops that you have to jump through. If you call us and we are not licensed in your jurisdiction, we will get you to somebody who is an expert in your jurisdiction. But please, by all means, reach out to us. 877-567-5293. You can also visit us 24/7. We have live chat at www.malamutlaw.com. Mark, we were talking about gender discrimination, pay discrimination. Olmstead is a case that is very significant, especially with the stress that people are feeling as a result of the pandemic. Help educate the audience.
Absolutely. The Olmstead opinion was one that helped expand the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it ruled that mental illness is a form of disability covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, why is that important? Because the Americans with Disabilities Act protects you from discrimination in the workplace. And it protects you from discriminating in the workplace if you have a disability. I can tell you I've brought cases because of this decision that Justice Ginsburg was able to write. I brought cases for people who were suffering from depression or PTSD and having problems in the workplace, and we were able to protect them or get them fair value for the wrongful termination. And when I was reviewing Justice Ginsburg's opinions, this is the one that really stood out to me because this is the one that I think ties in so closely with one of our core missions here at Malamut and Associates and what we're trying to do for injured workers. It takes me back a little bit, Adam, to when we first started meeting. We first kind of put together a plan when I was coming over to the firm, and the vision that you presented of you have been fighting for injured workers for decades now, but you wanted to do more.
You make me sound a lot older than I am, by the way.
It's experience.
But it has been a couple decades. But I just,
yes. I wasn't quite sure if we'd gotten to 2 yet, but I decided to roll the dice.
You're well over 2, Mark, but go ahead.
It's experience, not age. So, and what you want to do was, we've been doing this for so long, but I think there's another layer to it that we can do, and that's where my experience with employment law came in. And now we are able to, when people call us and they get in touch with our intake team, when they get those free consultations you get when you call, not only are we looking at how can we help you through the workers' compensation scheme that gives you rights, that can help pay for your medical bills and can help you with lost wages, but we are able to be aggressive, and we are able to push the envelope and say, well, how can we now also protect you against wrongful termination? And we're able to do that because of the laws that Justice Ginsburg expanded, and we're able to follow down that same path and say, no, COVID is an issue now that we want to make sure is covered under the Law Against Discrimination in the Americans with Disabilities Act. We want to make sure that more and more injuries that fall under the workers' compensation scheme are also protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act or the Law Against Discrimination in New Jersey. And this case is part of the path that we're walking down. And I think that we are able to provide this level of advocacy for our clients precisely because people like Justice Ginsburg helped pave the way. And that case really stuck out to me, and would encourage people who have mental illnesses, who have injuries, who have things that are interfering with their work. You're not on your own, and they should reach out and give us a call.
And that's right. A lot of folks, when we talked about occupational workers' compensation claims, we've talked about people that have had COVID and are still realizing the symptoms of COVID. You have rights. 877-567-5293, www.malamutlaw.com. Follow me on Instagram, attorney_Adam_Malamut, or on Twitter at Adam S. Malamut ESQ. Nicole, Justice Ginsburg was so much more than a justice and a legal pioneer. Let's talk about her as a human. Talk about some of the things that she did that just people may not realize.
There's things that she did as a human being that people don't realize that she was funny. She had a dry sense of humor. It came out in her exchanges with some of the judges. She had tremendous relationships across all party lines. Some fun facts, she could do 30 push-ups. As you mentioned earlier, she was a fitness enthusiast. She could do 30 push-ups up until a few years ago. She had a trainer. She worked out. She inspired the opera Scalia Ginsburg, which is actually you can see it remotely and is very powerful. She was a foodie, even though she was known to eat very, very slowly. She still savored her food. She loved eating out. And for my hip-hop friends, she and Notorious B.I.G., after she became the Notorious R.B.G., had a couple of things in common, some cool things. They were both born and raised in Brooklyn. Shout out to Brooklyn. 1993, pivotal point in time for both of them. Notorious B.I.G. released his first LP. I'm not going to tell you the name because I'm not going to curse on radio. And she became the Supreme Court Justice, thanks to Bill Clinton. And the other more important thing that she left behind was that both of them actually, were icons, but they also left tremendous social impact. There's a quote, very quickly. She said, "I don't say women's rights. I say the constitutional principle of the equal citizenship stature of men and women." She really was, and forever will be, a force to be reckoned with and an individual who truly supported humanity. And I keep coming back to that because in this very difficult, challenging time, I feel that we've lost sight of humanity and we need to find our way back.
Real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. November 3rd is your opportunity to create real change. There is going to be a battle on the national level as to whether a justice is appointed to replace Justice Ginsburg. Reach out to your senators. Reach out to the people who give to your senators, make sure people understand that the balance on the Supreme Court cannot tip too far in one direction. We cannot let Justice Ginsburg's work be for naught. I want to thank you for joining us this Saturday night, November 3rd, less than 40 days away is the election. I'm Adam Malamut on behalf of myself, Nicole, Mark, Krause, as always, thank you. I want to wish everybody well. Have a nice evening.
This is the Adam Malamut Show here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. As we close out the show on this Saturday night, some words from Chief Justice John Roberts, remembering Ruth Bader Ginsburg. See you next time, everybody.
It has been said that Ruth wanted to be an opera virtuoso, but became a rock star instead. But she chose the law. Subjected to discrimination in law school and the job market because she was a woman, Ruth would grow to become the leading advocate fighting such discrimination in court. She was not an opera star, but she found her stage right behind me in our courtroom. There, she won famous victories that helped move our nation closer to equal justice under law, to the extent that women are now a majority in law schools, not simply a handful.
Thanks for listening to the Adam Malamut Show, a Jacob Media production. If you're interested in learning more about the power of the radio hour, contact Joe Krause at 267-267.